Evolution of Colonial Government by Jackson Reed and Dawson Tucker. The Divine Right of Kings. The divine right of kings is a belief that God chose the king in the royal family. The people in the kingdoms that believed in this were accustomed into following it. The separation of English power. England has always had a parliament and a king or queen. Parliament is consisted of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. The House of Lords are wealthy noblemen that owned vast areas of land in England. The House of Commons were common civilians of England that represented their towns. Before the Magna Carta was signed, England was an absolute monarchy. The people wanted more representation in government, so Parliament was strengthened and given power. Religious turmoil in England. England had decided to become an Anglican country, and they despised Catholics. Their king being Catholic was one of the many reasons why the king and Parliament had major tensions. The English Civil War. One example of the rise of parliamentary power is the English Civil War. There was a conflict with King Charles I and Parliament over power. Parliament was tired of King Charles taxing everything, and they wanted to take control, and this conflict is known as the English Civil War. Parliament defeated the king's army, and England had a new ruler. This ruler's name was Oliver Cromwell, and he was now the Lord Protector of England. Because of him, England went through tough times, and once he died, England realized that they could not function with just one body. The son of Charles I, Charles II, was asked to come from France where he was hiding and be the next king of England. They made agreements to give Parliament more power so a conflict like this would not happen again. The Glorious Revolution. Parliament was an Anglican organization, and they were sick of having a Catholic king, but they knew that in order for the country to stay in a positive state, they needed a king or queen that was Anglican. The first relatives of King Charles II that were Anglican were William and Mary of Denmark, and they were asked to become king and queen of England. After this, they said that the only way they could become king and queen is if they would sign the English Bill of Rights. The rise of parliamentary power. There are many instances in which Parliament tries to take power from the king or queen. For example, during the Glorious Revolution, Parliament made William and Mary sign the English Bill of Rights. This gave Parliament more power. Parliament believed that the common people had rights that could not be taken away by the king. Colonial government. Much of colonial government is based off of Parliament. Since the colonies were full of English, the only types of government that they knew was that similar to the English government. This was the way that most colonies functioned. Connecticut. The Fundamental Orders of Connecticut was the first written constitution in the American colonies. Connecticut's government was much like Massachusetts because the founders of Connecticut were from Puritan Massachusetts. The difference was that there was a lot of separation of church and state. This government allowed all people to elect their governor. Virginia. Virginia's first government was called the First Assembly. The First Assembly was elected by the people, much like today's government in the House of Commons. This is later formed into the House of Burgesses. Virginia was the first form of government in the Americas. Representative government in the Americas. Enlightenment. Much of today's government is based off philosophy of government during the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a time when people used reason to explain nature. What do I mean by nature? Well, it means that people use reason to explain why science happens and how people think and are. One philosopher that studied government is John Locke. Locke wrote the book Two Treatises of Government. In the book, he said that people have natural rights, including the right to life, liberty, and property. Locke said that people before government were in a state of nature. He means that people's rights were not safe at any point of time. He said that people got together and gave up some rights to form government, which protected all men and their rights. Quote from John Locke: "The state of nature has the law of nature to govern it, which obliges everyone, and reason, which is that law, teaches all mankind who will but consult it, that being all equal and independent, no one ought to be harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions."